Hi book friends, I'm Erin, and this is Erin Go Read. Today is February 1st, and I'm going to do my January wrap-up. Now, I started the mid-month. I did a kind of a check-in mid-month, so I'm not going to be going over in detail those books, but early in the month, I finished off Great Expectations, which I'd started in October for Victober, and I just took way too long. It just took me forever to read it because I kept getting sidetracked by other shiny objects, and I think I would have enjoyed it more and probably given it 5 stars instead of 4 stars if I had just dug into it and read it straight through, but it definitely has me excited to read more Dickens in the future. I also read A Spool of Blue Thread. This I read on audiobook. This actually ended up winning the Pulitzer Prize. It was good family drama, but it didn't blow me away. It didn't seem like anything special. I must be missing something, but it was an enjoyable read for me, and I will read more Anne Tyler. I also read the first in the Cormoran Strike series by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling, The Cuckoo's Calling. I gave this 4 stars. I had to stop myself from picking up the next book 2 in this, as I have other books, as I had other books in line to read, but I'm excited to continue on with this series. I'm going to do a bit of a quick breakdown on what I read this month. I read 13 books in total. 3 of those were audiobook. I used the library app Libby. And then the age range / genre breakdown is I read 2 middle grade, 1 YA, 2 novellas, 2 literary fictions, 2 mystery or thriller, 2 sci-fi, 1 fantasy, 1 classic, and 1 nonfiction. I did participate in Buzzword-a-thon, and the buzzword was lie, so I read the only book I had with the word, excuse me, Stevie. Thank you. With a version of the word lie in it. Really? And that was Ruth Ware's The Lying Game. This was an entertaining read. I gave it 3.5 stars. Yeah, 3.5 stars. It is kind of a slow burn, and it started off, you have 4 friends. It kind of made me think of like Sex and the City. Yeah, these 4 female friends, and they went to boarding school together. And at the beginning of the book, one of the women who still lives in the area where their school was texts the rest of the friends and says, "I need you." So they all drop whatever they have. 2 of them have kids, and they go and see what it is she needs. And you learn about this game that they played when they were in boarding school, the lying game, where they would just basically see what lies they could get away with telling other people, just for the entertainment value of it, lying to other people. But at some point, this kind of comes to bite them in the butt, and you eventually learn this big mystery, or this event that occurred while they were at school together, and they've been lying about that ever since. Now, when it was first revealed what this big thing was, I was like, really, is that it? It didn't seem like that big of a deal, and just, it was kind of like in Harry Potter, where a lot of the time you just want to tell the kids, like, go see a grown-up, just talk to a grown-up. Kind of got that feeling from it, but then there's more, and it gets deeper as you go on. So I will definitely continue with Ruth Ware. I have in a, is it in a dark wood or in a dark wood by her? So it's an entertaining, fun read. My next 3.5 star book is the novella The Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. Yeah, by Sayaka Murata, and that's translated by Ginny Tapley Takemori. This is about I don't know if this is my speech language pathology background coming out, or it's just a trend in books right now, but I tend to find that a lot of characters I'm reading, I feel like belong on the autism spectrum. So I feel like our main character here, Keiko, has high-functioning autism. That might not be the case. There are some allusions to her attending therapy for something, which doesn't seem to be a psychological issue. It's stated that she's not normal. And from the time she's a child, there's some anecdotes about the way that she reacts to things that is completely inappropriate, but she just sees them as perfectly logical. And eyebrows are raised from a very young age at the way that she behaves and the way that she perceives the world. So after college, she ends up working in a convenience store, and when she gets the manual for the convenience store worker, it's like she received the manual for how to be a functioning adult. And she really thrives in this position. She finally feels comfortable, literally as a human, and she's perfectly happy being a part-time convenience store worker for the rest of her life. But society doesn't see that that's appropriate for a woman in her mid-30s. She should be getting married, she should be getting a real job, being a normal person. And so this book goes into her exploring that, and should she seek a different life, and what happens when she tries to do that. There are some things in this book, and I find this with Japanese literature to begin with, where part of what I really like about it is that it tends to be kind of quirky. And I get a lot of little giggles when I read this, and other works as well. The Traveling Cat Chronicles, and I'm about to talk about The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. But sometimes I'm not sure, did the author in the original language intend for that to be like quirky and funny, or is that a result of the translation? So I don't know. I still really enjoyed it. Looking forward to more from this author and more Japanese fiction in general. I don't have a copy of Vox, as it was a library copy. It was a library loan, Vox by Christina Dalcher. I gave 3 stars. So the premise of this book is that we're in the very near future. We don't find out how the United States got to this point, but it's now a year and a half after the government has taken a very far right turn, even from where we are now, to where this kind of, this pastor or preacher has somehow kind of shanghaied the government into following along with these like beyond literal interpretation of the Bible, to where women wear a counter on their wrist, euphemistically called a bracelet, and it counts the number of words that they speak per day. This even includes the number of words that they read a day. And so they have a limit of 100 words per day. So you've lost almost half the workforce. Society has major changes as a result of this. And our main character was a cognitive linguist. She was in the process of coming up with a cure for Wernicke's aphasia. Now, number one, that super got me interested because I have a master's degree in speech-language pathology. So Wernicke's aphasia is a particular type of aphasia that is common when someone has had a stroke. It can occur from other brain injuries as well. And there are multiple types of aphasia. Wernicke's is a specific type of aphasia. And so I know all this because I study this very deeply. I don't think, though, that this was explored and explained enough for the lay public who's reading this to really get a solid understanding of what is going on here. It is done a bit. The author of the book is a linguist herself, and so she's coming with this scientific knowledge and experiential knowledge of this condition. But what ends up happening is that someone very close to the president acquires Wernicke's aphasia, and our main character is temporarily brought in to basically finish working on her cure for Wernicke's aphasia, and so her bracelet is removed, and she is temporarily allowed to speak as much as she needs to in order to accomplish her task. Now, aside from me not thinking that the aphasia bits were kind of explained adequately. I also felt it ended quite abruptly and like quickly. Like I probably had 50 pages or so left, and I was thinking, oh man, this could be a series. Like, is this going to keep going? And then I didn't feel that like 50 pages or so, what I was thinking was enough to adequately wrap things up. It just seemed kind of too tidy at the end. I also thought there could be a prequel to this. How did we come about to this? There's a year and a half of time between the point that this change in the United States occurred to when the story starts. So I feel like a lot more could have been done with this. I enjoyed the premise of it, but I think it could have been a lot better. So I ended up giving that 3 stars, and I have recommended it to another speech language pathologist. All right, so we're going to move into the 4-star books of the month. On audiobook, I read Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day. This was a really fun read, or listen. This follows Spencer? Stevens. This follows Stevens, a butler of a large estate, a large manor house in the English countryside. And we have current day, this house is now owned by an American, and he's kind of fumbling a little bit with how to communicate with this new kind of, brusque American as compared to the very dignified Lord Darlington, who was the previous master of the house. So he has kind of that, I guess, social communication struggle and the changing times now. And then he reminisces quite a bit about the way that things used to be when Lord Darlington and his family was there. And this is basically is a road trip book. So he starts off at the house, and then he has cause to go on, I think it's a 3-day road trip to go visit a former staff member. And as he meets people along the way and thinks about things himself, he is reminiscing about the old Darlington Manor. So it is quite comical. This is another one where I don't know if it's because I don't think this is translated. I think, although Kazuo Ishiguro is a Japanese author, I believe he wrote this in English. And it's like a very charming look at English butlers and what it is to be a great butler. And Stevens is very fixed on what it is to be a great butler, what qualities one would have, and can you be a great butler if you're not working in a great house? And so you get these you just want to pat Stevens on the head. You're so cute. It was just a thrill to listen to. I really love Stevens. You get a bit of like a Downton Abbey kind of feel. It does take place around that same era as Downton Abbey, where you're moving from the old ways of these large manor houses and lords and ladies and a house full of servants to the times changing, and the number of staff in these houses dwindles, and basically the tides of society are changing, and those large manor houses are becoming less and less of a part of high society. So it was a fantastic book. I gave it 4 stars, maybe even higher. I don't know, 4.5 maybe. I'm very excited to read I Have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro and The Buried Giant. So I'm excited to get into both of those in the future. Next up for 4 stars, we have Red Rising by Pierce Brown. My husband and I are reading this series together. So if you haven't seen in a previous video. My husband has a severe traumatic brain injury. He lives about 15 minutes away from me in a rehab home, and I'm blessed to get to spend a good part of almost every day with him. And what we do for pleasure is read. And so we're currently reading the Red Rising trilogy. We are on Golden Sun. We're right about halfway through Golden Sun right now, the book 2, and the Red Rising series. We're both very much enjoying it. So far from book 2, I prefer Red Rising to Golden Sun. It takes place on Mars, and we have the society is what the government is called. And this entire society is built upon a color-based caste system. So Darrow, our main character, is a red. And he later finds out that he's not just a red, but he's a low red. And he and his family, for generations and generations before, have been living and working underground the surface of Mars, terraforming, is it Hydrogen-3, I think, in order to, they believe that they are terraforming Mars for humans in the future to be able to sustain life on the surface of Mars. So there's a bit of a noble act that they think that they're performing as they struggle to barely have enough food to eat to get by. So they're really kept down, but they feel like they're working for a greater cause, and so it helps kind of spur them on. So we get to follow Darrow as he goes through some significant trials in the mines where he lives, and how he ends up seeing how things could be different, and the lengths that he goes with the help of some others to make change in the society. My next 4-star read is Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This is the first in a novella trilogy. I believe in January or February, the bind-up of these 3 novellas is coming out. So this is really short. It's 90 pages. 90 pages, and I read this in one sitting. My niece Holly and I did a cozy reading day a couple weeks ago, and I read this in an hour and a half or so that afternoon. So this is about Binti, who is the first of her people to leave to go off to this prestigious university, Umza University, and there is an alien race, the Meduse. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be Meduse or Medusa, the Meduse race. And there have not been good relationships between humans and the Meduse in the past. And I'm thinking that Binti might be that person who has that special skill that is going to kind of be the liaison between humans and the Meduse. So we'll have to see in the next books whether that comes to be. But Binti is a very brave young woman, very intelligent young woman who takes a huge chance in leaving Earth to go attend this prestigious university. I had 4 5-star books in January. The first is a middle grade historical fiction, and that is When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit by Judith Kerr. So this is the story of a young girl and her family who, due to her father's outspoken writings against Hitler and the Nazi Party, they have to move to France for safety and for her father in order to continue to work. And so you get, from the perspective of this young girl, what it was like to have to move to a new place. She and her brother have to learn French. Her father is struggling to find work even in France, and then what happens in the future. So what I find really interesting about this too is that this is before the Holocaust actually begins. It's just the rise of the Nazi Party at this point. So reading this that it's only going to get worse from here on out. But this is the beginning of their journey and how they're going to live and survive, and that life is going to be very different from here on out. And I would very much recommend this for like middle grade readers who are probably going to be too young for The Diary of Anne Frank. This, I think, is going to be really accessible for those like 8 to 12-year-olds or 35-year-olds like myself. But I can see putting this in the hands of my 9-year-old niece, and I think she would totally get it. Speaking of my 9-year-old niece, she is reading this book as well. This is Anna James's Pages & Co., Tilly and the Bookwanderers. This book is so fun. First of all, let me just, as a physical object, this is beautiful. So I love this color. I love this cover. And the back continues on. We have all these fun characters. We have the gold. But then, take off the dust jacket. The naked hardback is illustrated as well. And then we have these cute end papers. And then even sometimes depending on what's going on in the story, the text will do some kind of fun things. So here we have an example. The text kind of trailing off here. We get little illustrations. There's some cards right there. Every now and again that will have to do with the story and just makes it ever more fun. Here's another example of the text there and another picture. So Tilly is our main character. She's a young girl who lives with her grandparents who own a bookshop, and they live above the bookshop. And Tilly discovers that she can bookwander. She can enter into her favorite books. And so you get to find out, as she finds out more about this, her grandparents maybe know more than they're first letting on, and you discover, as she discovers, the underlibrary, which exists beyond the British Library in England, and there's all sorts of rules about who can bookwander and how you can bookwander, and it's just a fantastic story. It, like in Ready Player One, how if you were like a 80s kid, you get those great nostalgic 80s references. In this book, you get these great nostalgic literary references, particularly Alice from Alice in Wonderland and Anne Shirley of Anne and Green Gables, and there are more characters to discover as well. This is going to be a series, and I can't wait for the next book to come out. I can't wait for my niece Holly to finish reading this book. Okay. My next 5-star read of the book is the only book that I read this month that is on the PBS Great American Read List, which is a project where I'm going through and reading the top 100 of America's favorite books based on a PBS survey, and that was The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. And this is number 14? Number 14 on the PBS Great American Read List. I'm pretty stubborn when it comes to things being popular, and then me, basically, I don't want to read something or do something because other people have said to. And so that's why it took me so long to get around to reading The Book Thief. I should have read it years ago, but I suppose books come to you when it's their time to come to you. So I'm very happy to have read this now. This book is very unique in that the narrator is Death itself. Death is narrating it, but it is told through the eyes or the perspective of Liesel, our main character, who's a young girl. But every now and then we have a chapter that's just Death, and Death is kind of giving you some editorial. So Death kind of editorializes, and it was those chapters or those little snippets from Death that really got me. And I can't remember, probably Harry Potter, as many times as I've read it, is the last book that's made me cry until The Book Thief, and this one particular line got me. So this is a World War II book. Jews are in hiding. It's the reign of Hitler and the Nazis, and so the Holocaust is happening. We have, in this book, it takes place in Munich, and we have like these terrible parades of Jews marching toward the town onto a concentration camp. And so that is all happening. And here's this line: "Summer came. For the book thief, everything was going nicely. For me," that is Death, For me, the sky was the color of Jews. Man, and that's just one example. So Liesl is living with a foster family in Munich, and it's about her relationships, the relationship that she forms with her foster parents. She becomes very close with Papa, her foster father. There are two other male characters, one an adult, one a boy her age, who she develops great friendships with, and we explore those. And we have a big book burning scene where the Nazis don't, Mein Kampf is pretty much the only acceptable reading material. So they do this big book burning, and it's an illustration of the scarcity of books at the time and how precious they were to Liesl. And so throughout the book, we have multiple examples of her stealing books and cherishing books. And that helps to drive the story along as we have the historical backdrop of Nazi Germany and Jews being marched off to concentration camps. So it's horrible, it's beautiful and moving and important. I can't recommend it highly enough. The last book that I completed in January is Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Mariller. This is the first in the Seven Waters trilogy. This and every Juliet Mariller book came highly recommended from Jean over at Jean's Bookish Thoughts, and I am completely on board with her recommendations. So our main character, Sorka, and her 6 brothers and her father live in medieval Ireland. Her father is a farmer and a warrior, and there's the Irish, and the Irish are basically in constant battle with the Britons, and a lot of Colum, her father's life, is surrounded by keeping the Britons off of their land and protecting their homeland of Ireland. And then her 6 brothers, as people tend to be individuals, all have their individual traits as well as Sorka, and so some are more apt for the kind of warrior life and on board with their father, and some have other gifts and other ideas. So they're living this great family life with their subsisting on their land, and then with the battle that they have to engage in with the Britons. This woman appears, and she has essentially bewitched Colum, the father. The other siblings see it. What is going on with Dad? They don't like this lady, and things kind of go downhill from there. So I haven't read the fairy tale that this is based off of. But this is based off of a fairy tale where a witch or something turns the 6 brothers into swans. And so this is a retelling of that, but it goes much beyond that, and I don't believe the rest of these stories have anything to do with that. But Sorka, the stepmother ends up turning her brothers into swans. And as you see the swan here on the cover. And so Sorka has this terrible task, very painful, laborious, seemingly endless task that she has to complete in order to save her brothers' lives and have them turned back into human form from their swan form. So all sorts of things end up happening that, get in her way. Trigger warning for sexual assault. There's a pretty terrible sexual assault that is described in this. It's hard to read, but it is an important part of the story, unfortunately. And then it is not in detail, but it is referenced in the future in the story. And there ends up being a love interest, and will she complete this task? what will come of her father and Lady Unag. Lady Unag is the stepmother in the story. So it's a slow burn for sure. It's not a fantasy where like things are constantly happening. It's very much character driven and just beautifully written. So I have what's the next book? Son of something. I have the next book. I'm probably going to wait a bit. I have several fantasy books, a series that I want to start, so I think it might take me a while to get back around to this, but I'm definitely looking forward to more Juliet Mariller in my life. So that's it for my January 2019 wrap up. In the last few days of January, I have started 3 different books, so those won't be finished until early February. So what I think I might do is take a page from Russel over at Ink and Paper blog and do more like he calls it read and reviewed, where he waits till he's read 3 books and then he does a spotlight on, or like a mini wrap up on all 3 of those books, so that the videos themselves are a bit more concise and they don't go forever long like this one did. So I might switch to more of a format like that. This is my first month as a booktuber, so it's been a lot of fun and I really appreciate anyone who's watching. Hi out there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Please comment. Have you read any of these books? Have I got you interested in reading any of these books? What did you read in January? And see you around the tubes.